anyway, Smart Growth is a book that came out written by the American Planning Association, and of course it was a federal grant that funded it. And the common theme is government control of land use with no regard for private property rights. You can own the land, but you can't do with it anything that the government doesn't approve. This is the big problem. So it totally disregards, of course, our Fourth Amendment, our U.S. Constitution's Fourth Amendment. So we need to know these documents in order to know what our rights are, in order to stand up for them, and to help those that we have elected understand as well. They work hand in hand with the Habitat. Now this is different from Habitat for Humanity, but I'm not certain that they have much of a different philosophy. I have seen Jimmy Carter on the stump in Monterrey, Mexico, when George W. Bush was our president, and we were going down because they were talking at that time about a global taxing scheme. And what happened at that point was that George W. Bush increased our foreign aid. Oof. That did not feel good to watch that. But anyway, so Habitat, Jimmy Carter was a mess. And he was, you know, when you're on foreign turf, at least then you would think that all Americans would pull together and unite for our own defense and our own liberty of our own liberties. But Jimmy Carter was there to ridicule the United States. You know, that's how he captures the headlines. So I very much resented it. But anyway, back to the topic here. At a meeting in Vancouver, British Columbia, back in 1976, they said that land cannot be treated as an ordinary asset, controlled by individuals and subject to the pressures and inefficiencies of the market. Private land ownership is also a principal instrument of accumulation and concentration of wealth, and therefore contributes to social injustice. Public control of land use is therefore indispensable. That is the goal of these people with this philosophy. So there are 5 model statutes that have been presented to government, and that's at the state level, the county level, local level, regional. The first is a study committee composed of state legislators and a State Department head. That's not the U.S. State Department, that is a State Department head, like our land commissioner, for example, could be invited to this. The second type of model is an independent study committee composed of state legislators, a State Department head, and citizen representatives. And the third is a permanent joint legislative study committee on planning, land use, and growth management. And then you have 2 models for executive orders. I don't like any of these. Our government works just fine from the bottom up. We have a constitutional republic. We don't need this top-down, trickle-down kind of government control. But that's exactly what these models present. And as you see, they were meeting in Boston this year to discuss all of this. So it's not gone away just because we've had a change of presidents and just because the President's Council on Sustainable Development is dormant as of 1999. It doesn't matter. The federal grants are still funding all of this nonsense. The EPA has what it calls visioning and challenge grants that they offer to local communities. And so they have stakeholder groups that they bring together, businesses, finance, education, and local government officials. And the county or government or regional plans they have facilitated for sustainable development. They identify what the residents treasure in their county and what they want for the future of their county. And of course, there's wide agreement on most of that. They seek to clarify and resolve any differences. In other words, they will single out anybody who is disagreeable and make them look like they're a brick short of the law, just to say it nicely. And they will build broad commitment among citizens and public, private, and nonprofit sectors for county priorities. I remember when they were trying to implement, I think it was called Goals 2000, at the first time in the education, which means set the standard real low so that everybody can reach it, but don't let those who would excel beyond that low standard. We got to dumb them all down. That's what it ends up being. Rush Limbaugh today, I had a chance to listen more than I typically do because of being on the drive today from Dallas. was talking about the lowest common denominator. And that is exactly what Barack Hussein Obama is after. And many of you familiar with this little organization. Some I've heard called ICLEI, which kind of sounds icky, which I think is probably a good way of saying it. I've heard it ICLEI, whatever. But it is the International Council for Local Environmental Initiatives. Now, I see something very wrong even in the title. How can something be international and local? I mean, it doesn't even make sense. And yet, a friend and I were at one meeting in Istanbul, Turkey in 1996, and it was a housing summit. And afterwards, she went to visit with a Texas small-town mayor who was over in Istanbul, Turkey, to ask him, why did you go there? What were you hoping to accomplish? And folks, it was simply because he could rub shoulders on an international level at taxpayer expense and feel like more than a big, big boy. He was, now with the big leagues instead of just a small town mayor. It was very tragic. And, he doesn't understand. There's certain credit cards you can use, and you can get frequent flyer miles, and you can take those trips. That's how I do it. Okay. So, what does ICLEI do? It is an international association committed to sustainable development, which they call smart growth or growth management. It's in 600 communities, and it was just formed in 1995. I've seen another source that said 1990, I think. But anyway, just in the 90s. So it's not very old. Hasn't been around that long. They have a star community index. I can tell you a number of years ago. Ooh, I'm getting old. But anyway, I served on the Human Service Commission for the city of Dallas, and the chairman of that committee wanted so badly for the city of Dallas to be a healthy city. And I said, well, doctor, who is a healthy city and who grants you that recognition, and what do you have to do to be recognized? What do you have to continue to do? How much does it cost? I mean, I kept asking questions. Finally, he decided, let's establish an ad hoc committee, and you're the chairman. Well, I just kept asking those questions and kept going round and round until it finally was flushed down the toilet. So, you just have to get engaged in these things, not shy away from them. But these star community indexes, why would anybody want it? You ought to find out what it means, how much does it cost, etc. And so that's how they get you in.